Good morning, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. Still a little bit bleary-eyed this morning. It's very early. I got a request to cover my hazelnut guild, so I'm going to talk about that this morning. It is still early in the year, so many things are just coming up, and I will be coming back and covering this guild again later in the summer when things are much more filled out. So let me flip the camera around and I'll show you. So here next to the woodshed, you can see my female hardy kiwi, which I need to finish stringing up to the roof of my woodshed. Down below it is a short variety of clematis. Here is my hazelnut in the context of this part of the garden. So it is squirrel planted. You can see that it gets quite tall and it is just beginning to leaf out. Now I left this here. It was a couple of years old when we bought the house. It's right along the fence line. I just left it because it's so happy and I use it for coppice. You can check out my video on coppicing trees. You can see here I've created a stool. And we coppice it for stakes and firewood, and my kids like to whittle, so we use it for that as well. So a couple of folks requested, what do you have going on in your hazelnut guild? Again, I preach this point a lot. Feel free to have flexibility in your guilds. You can put things in, you can pull them out, you can try things out, they might not work, you can rethink your design, tweak it. Nothing has to be permanent. Everything can be shifted and maneuvered as you refine your system and you make your companion planting work better. And that is essentially what guilds are, companion planting. The permaculture way. So underneath this hazel, I have a black currant. And the reason that I put it here is black currants do well in partial shade. So it does fine underneath this hazel. And also it's right near my woodshed and the path that I walk down to the chicken coop every day. The flowers and the leaves of a black currant are so fragrant. I love the foxy, smelling them foxy smell of this plant. It's fantastic. When you brush up against it, it releases the aroma. So not only is it a useful food crop, useful for making tea out of, delicious. I love blackcurrant tea on a winter morning. But it's an aromatic plant that I really enjoy. So I try and plant it near paths where I will brush up against it or walk by it and be able to enjoy that aroma. Again, quite shade tolerant. You can see it gets about 5 feet tall, although I could prune it shorter. Now this blackcurrant is quite old. I planted it the first year we were here. So I have begun rooting some more cuttings of it because eventually this currant is going to reach the end of its lifespan and I want to propagate it and get a replacement going immediately. Now underneath that, I have our native yarrow. You can check out my plum guild video about how I like to grow yarrow as a ground cover. It does a great job of smothering weeds. In front of it is more of a decorative bed, and I've been reworking this. I didn't used to have this bottle wall here, which needs a little reworking. And everything in here is quite dormant. I put a chive chunk here a couple of weeks ago. I have a couple of other ornamental things here because what I want is a flower border that overflows this bottle wall on this downhill slope and provides visual interest at the front of the guild. So again, combining that permaculture, productive food forest element with cottage gardening is definitely what I want. Just beginning to emerge, I have my sea kale, Cranberry maritima, great plant, permaculture plant, edible, highly decorative. Love making fritters out of the flowers. Now, if we look back into the back corner of this guild here up against my neighbor's fence, you can see I have put up some temporary fencing because the chickens are in this part of the orchard rotationally. Now, let me come back in here. Rhubarb coming up. I'm going to remove this because I actually walk back here quite a bit and it ends up being right in my path. You can see here, I want to be walking this way. So underneath here at the base of my hazel, again, you can see the stool here. Sorry, my neighbor's dog is real excited. I have giant Solomon seal, which I'll be doing a video on shortly. One of my favorite shade-loving native edible plants. Gorgeous plant. I also have wood anemones, which I did not plant. They crept in from either the neighbor's yard or they were here from the previous owners ages ago. There's loads of them, and unfortunately they are done flowering. Anemone nemorosa and anemone blanda both make a great low ground cover, early flowering plant that comes up. This is a blue flowering variety, and I have a white flowering variety in a different part of the garden. So if you want a low growing herbaceous plant that comes up early in the year, produces white or blue flowers, and has these lovely little leaves, again, low growing, and it dies back to the ground and disappears for the rest of the year. Think about a wood anemone. I feel like I'm really glad this volunteered in my garden, really glad it came up here. Even though I didn't plant it, I really enjoy it. It's one of the first flowering things in my yard. Wish I had shown it to you. I'll cut in a picture of what they look like in flower, but they've just finished. So again, temporary fencing. If we look over here, I've put some stumps here because you can see this part of the garden is where my golden raspberries are, and I have old rotting logs that I flip over that provide grubs and all kinds of invertebrate snacks for my chickens. So when I release my chickens in here, I flip over my old logs and they can get the snacks on the bottom. I put these stumps in here so my kids and I would have a place to sit. My eldest child often comes out here and draws. I like to sit out here and hang out with the chickens and ducks. So I have some seating under here and it's shady. Good choice over here. Now let me come in to the run and show you the rest of it because, walking past these lovely fragrant currants, because if you have chickens in your orchard or where your fruit trees are planted, it is much harder to do guild design. Okay, now we're on the other side of the fence where my clematis and my David Austin rose are growing up and over. You can see here it's the currant I was showing you from the other side, just beginning to flower. Being serenaded by a hen laying an egg. So you can see on this side of the fence where the chickens are freely roaming 1/3 of the time. We have a rotational poultry paddock, so they're not in here always, but they are in here every few weeks. And they really work over the wood chips I put in here. The topsoil here the humus is super thick because these chickens scratch and break down wood chips super fast. Another vote for anemones, wood anemones, under your fruit trees in a chicken accessible area. Chickens will not bother the wood anemones. So they are not destroyed. You can see over here a little bit of Solomon seal. I have found they will peck at it, but they don't actively destroy it. So another chicken resistant plant for your guilds. Now, here I have, forgive the mess along the fence. I try and keep my chickens from going under the neighbor's fence. Here I have the same issue I had with my black currant. I had a large red currant here that was one of the first things I put in my garden right here. And I find that my currants live about 10 to 12 years. So when they hit about 9, 10 years old, I start rooting cuttings of them. So I have two replacement red currants up and ready to go. I just removed the dead mama currant. Now, currants I find do very well in a chicken run, and they are again shade resistant, shade tolerant, so a good choice for your underneath your hazels. The one problem I have found is, if you can see here, the chickens will eat the leaves. So any of the leaves, see if my camera will focus here, any of the leaves that are at chicken level will get pecked, but as you reach up higher, it does very well. So you may want to consider protecting your currants if they're little and young, but once they get established, totally fine. The other consequence of having chickens in with your currants is any of the berries that are within chicken reach will get eaten, and that's fine. They're a snack for the chickens, and I get the ones up high. The last plant I want to talk about in this area, let me stand up here, is my Rosa rugosa. So just leafing out, super thorny, highly chicken resistant plant. Lovely flowers, good pollinator attractor. If you're wondering why I have this palette here, in the summer I actually prop it up and provide a little shade hideaway area for my chickens when they are in here for longer periods of time, so they feel safe from predators. And also I put a nest box under here. They often lay under here in the summer, but for the winter I lay it flat, and then I'll prop it up and they will feast on all of the grubs and goodies that are underneath there. So ideally, coming back to my hazel here, I would love to be able to establish more things in this part of the run in the guild. But I also need to be conscious of the fact that whatever I put in has to be chicken proof. I've got to be able to work with the conditions of my site. And this portion of my site, it's going to be more wood chips and more poultry and more disturbance. This part of my site, much more undisturbed, can allow for plants that are not chicken tolerant. So I hope you enjoyed that look early in the season at my hazel guild. I'll be showing you more things later in the summer as this tree leaves out and more of the herbaceous companion plants are in their full glory. For now, think about if you need to design your guilds within the context of livestock and how that might change the plants that you put in versus no livestock. So when we're thinking about that freedom to design, make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success and working within the realities of our system. So thank you for watching. I'm going to actually go have my coffee this morning because it is super early and I have not had my coffee yet. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. And please let me know what content you would like to see. I would love to cover the various aspects of permaculture that interest you. So thanks.